Good afternoon, members of the media and Bermuda. These are fast-moving times, and this government is committed to ensuring that Bermuda keeps up. We have hit the ground running and intend to maintain that momentum. I have promised regular updates on the government's plans as we progress our agenda for a better and fair Bermuda, and that is why I stand before you today. In order to provide jobs for Bermudians and ensure that Bermuda prospers, not just one segment of Bermuda, but all of Bermuda, we must focus on our economy. To that end, I'm announcing that government will be making it a national priority to prepare Bermuda for an upcoming assessment that is of critical importance to our country's economic future. Starting in the spring of 2018, Bermuda will be subject to an evaluation. This evaluation will involve us being measured against the relevant international standards to determine the adequacy and effectiveness of our laws, systems, and institutional framework when it comes to combating money laundering and anti-terrorist financing. As you can tell, this is a critically important evaluation to ensure that Bermuda maintains its international reputation for being highly regulated. This comprehensive assessment will involve more than a dozen government agencies and entities inside of the private sector. It will be carried out by a team of assessors under the oversight of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force and will be subject to review and ultimate approval by the global network of relevant international standard-setting body, the Financial Action Task Force. I cannot emphasize too strongly to everyone on our island the necessity for Bermuda to make sure that we get a good score on our international examination. Our economic stability and the future of international business platform could be dependent upon it. Our recognition of the understanding of this impact of this initiative has resulted in us as a new government taking quick and decisive action. We have already carried out an evaluation of our current state of preparedness for this critical review, and we have determined a path forward to ensure future success. As a result, we are now taking active and aggressive steps to address this ongoing challenge that Bermuda has been facing since our last review in 2007. In the first instance, I have commissioned a cabinet committee to provide leadership and oversight of Bermuda's efforts. As Premier and Minister of Finance, I will chair this special committee, which will include the Attorney General and Minister for Legal Affairs, Senator the Honorable Kathy Lightbourne Simmons, JP, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Walton Brown, JP, MP, the Minister for Economic Development and Tourism, the Honorable Jamal Simmons, JP, MP, the Minister for National Security, the Honorable Wayne Keynes, JP, MP. To highlight our commitment in this area, we have already scheduled the first meeting of this Cabinet Subcommittee, which will take place tomorrow, and we will continue to meet on a regular basis to assess progress and ensure that timely and effective action continues to be taken. While we must take leadership on this important initiative, we cannot do this alone. We have already committed to working with all government agencies, and our numerous private sector partners. The National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, of which Ms. Cheryl Lister chairs, advises the government on all matters relating to anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing. The many agencies that form part of this committee have already demonstrated a high level of commitment to their work in this area, but they need the committed leadership and direct involvement of the Cabinet. I will be meeting with members of the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee following this press conference to assure them of my personal commitment and that of my cabinet colleagues, and to obtain firsthand and even greater understanding of any challenges that they may be facing. We are also meeting with key entities in the private sector to further strengthen the partnership and to reinforce the importance of the role that we will all need to play together. Although Bermuda already has a comprehensive legal framework that has been developed and updated over many years, the complexity of the standards against which we are being evaluated mean that there are still some outstanding legislative initiatives that must be progressed. This is one of the very significant reasons that we will be recalling Parliament in early September to address these and other important matters. In the meantime, work will continue on the effective implementation and evaluation of our current framework. It is important to understand that these matters, as they may sound very technical, can not only impact our economy, but can have a positive impact on the social fabric of our society. It is an initiative in which all of us can play a role. We can support the compliance initiatives of Bermuda businesses as they know their customers and protect Bermuda's financial system from criminal abuse. As we carry out our business activities, we can build our knowledge and understanding of these matters so that we can recognize and report suspicions of money laundering or terrorist financing activities to the Financial Intelligence Agency. This is crucial so that appropriate analysis and action can be taken. As we have highlighted today, having a strong and effective framework to combat money laundering and terrorist financing is important to our island home. It can feel distant and remote and sometimes bothersome to many of our citizens, but the prosperity of Bermuda depends on it. And when Bermuda succeeds and works together, we all will have a chance to succeed. Our regime is already robust and effective, but the international community must have measures by which to acknowledge and recognize this. And that is what this assessment is all about. There is work to be done, but this government will do all that we can to ensure that Bermuda achieves the required level of success, because this government recognizes that in this endeavor, failure is not an option if we are to remain the jurisdiction of choice. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have on the exciting topic of our NAMLAC review.
Mr. Premier, may I ask you, you say an evaluation of our current state of preparedness has been carried out. What was the result of that survey?
What I can say is that from the 2007 assessment that we had, we have met all the items that we were assessed on at the 2007 assessment. What is important to recognize, however, that these things constantly change and they are constantly moving. So there are some new requirements. We'll be going back to Parliament. And for the most part, we've found that there are some things that are in good stead. There are some things that we need to progress further. But we are confident that with a new cabinet committee, ensuring that these items receive the appropriate level of attention, that will be well positioned to meet the deadlines that we face next year.
Now, we have been working on this apparently for about a year now. Am I right in assuming it's people with heavy cash purchasing, like jewelry shops and banks and car distributors? Is that the kind of area that you're looking at?
There's many different areas, but I will let the technical expert, if she would like to answer that question specifically, to go ahead.
It'll be financial institutions.
Can you come to the microphone?
Sorry. My apologies. Sorry, thank you. It will be the financial institutions, of course, the banks and the investment companies and all the trust companies, as well as the high-value dealers, including the jewelers and the real estate sector. So it's very much a multi-agency, multi-industry and a multi-sector that will be involved in this process. The evaluation will be of the government authorities as well as of the effectiveness in which industry is implementing these requirements.
Is there any indication that there is problems in that area with money laundering in Bermuda?
There is no perfect sieve that you can put in place. So there's always, in any jurisdiction, we're not different, there will be money laundering. But I think that in Bermuda, we do have stringent requirements in place to ensure that it is kept to a minimum, and where it does occur, that we can find it and deal with it in an effective and robust way.
And should we not pass muster? Are we due to be on some blacklist? Is that the danger?
Brian, we will pass the muster. The fact is that Bermuda has a very effective regime already. As I stated, the items from 2007, we've met all of those requirements. The things have updated, and we will make sure that we will do the work that is required. We are an international financial jurisdiction, an international financial center. We're one of the first countries outside or minor countries to achieve Solvency II equivalence. We are a well-regarded international financial center, and we will pass the muster. but what it will require is for all of us to work together, all of us to fill out the forms that the bank asks us to fill out, no matter how cumbersome and bothersome they are, and recognize that this process is a national priority to ensure that we can all work together, the public sector, the private sector, to ensure that when the assessors come, they will have nothing but good things to say about Bermuda and our strong and effective regime.
Thank you.
Mr. Trott?
Yes, we're just curious, Premier, why the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force was selected to oversee this process.
It wasn't a case of selection. We are part of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force as in the whole global network. You have to be assigned to a regional body, and that's the body that we were assigned to. In the past, we did have the IMF, and we were intending to continue with that, but unfortunately, due to resource constraints on their part, they were not able to do another assessment for us because we are not a member of the IMF, and therefore we are now doing it under the banner of the CFATF. But what I would say is that in the past, even though the IMF did it, it was approved by the CFATF. So we've been part of that body since 1998. Thank you.
Maybe ask you other questions as well, Mr. Premier.
If they have to do with AML, ATF, sure. Mr. Bell?
A lot of rumors going around about what will happen to the Leahy suit in Boston. Now your government's in power. Can you give us a guideline on where you intend to go with that?
I can only refer you to the answers that we gave, I think, when these questions were asked 2 days ago, that the Attorney General is reviewing the matter, and when there is anything to report, she'll be happy to update you, and I'm quite sure she might do it from this exact podium.
So you made reference the other day to having a look under the hood. Do you have any updates on what surprises you found?
I wouldn't necessarily say surprises. What I'd say is that the work of government continues. This is one of the many matters of which are of national importance. And so from that particular aspect, we said that one of our first actions, as I said, was to form a special cabinet committee to ensure that this assessment, which must be a national priority for all persons in this country, gets the attention in which it deserves and is able to be progressed forward.
Are you able to update us on, you had the meeting with union heads earlier in the week. Any particular issues that came out of that?
No, I wouldn't say there's any particular issues. I think that members of the public service unions and the workers of whom they represent have been without I think a pay increase since 2010, and that's something they's ongoing negotiations. We know previously had broken down under the former government, but in our 100-day plan, we had pledged to make sure that we resolved those issues within our first 100 days. But we are not negotiating with the unions. The negotiating team will engage with the unions, and we will move that process forward. But what is most important, because you can recall that the members of the previous government did not want to meet with members of the union, we believe that it is important to have that dialogue and for all persons in Bermuda to work together. So whether it's the meetings with the unions that we had, the meetings with ABIC, the meetings with ABIR, or the meetings with the Chamber of Commerce, we will continue to make sure that we work in a collaborative fashion to address the concerns of which we have and to advance our agenda to create more jobs in Bermuda for Bermudians. And we will work with any stakeholder that makes that possible. But the most important thing that we should be focusing on today to ensure that we can have more jobs in Bermuda for Bermudians is to ensure that there's a national priority for us in this national anti-money laundering assessment.